Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you to everybody joining us also online. It is a huge privilege to be back. I'm wearing a little prompt to remind us of how creative we can be, even with young people in the community. So it's really fun to see these other little bits to remind us how creative we are. I have the pleasure of introducing the next panel, Cultural Heritage and Fashion Entrepreneurship, moderated by Sandra Chege from Kenya. The panel explores the social and economic challenges and opportunities designers and entrepreneurs face in the African landscape of fashion. So, a nice drum beat to emphasize fashion being the operative. The panel delves into the representation of intellectual property, which is a really important hot topic, as we know, both on and off the continent in terms of the diaspora. And I know that I have some bits missing. Thank you, sir. Okay. And also looking at, apart from intellectual property, we'll also look at market access, which I think is another issue that we want to delve into, and I think we have an incredible panel here to address those issues. But it would be remiss of us not to also introduce Sandra. I'll give you a little bit of an overview of Sandra and who she is. A phenomenal Sandra is a cultural producer with over 10 years of experience in event production and art administration. Sandra holds a BA in psychology from the United States Intellectual University in Nairobi and an MA in theater and media for development from the University of Winchester. As head of arts for the British Council in Kenya, Sandra is responsible for the strategy, delivery of programs, creating opportunities for collaboration between creative in SA and the UK. She has a strong interest in festivals, cultural heritage, digital culture, and the intersection of art and technology. I think what's important when we read some of the bios of our guests is also that you'll find people with interests that you share, and so it is nice to hear where people come from, their experience and expertise, and it gives you an opportunity to go up to them once the panel is done. So thank you so much, Sandra. Over to you. I look forward to this panel. Fashion.
Hello, everyone. One more time. Hello, everyone. Hello. There we go. You are fed. Well fed. I'm really excited to be here with you. As was mentioned, my name is Sandra Chege. I'm head of arts for the British Council's work in Kenya, and I lead on a portfolio we call Culture Response to Global Challenges. That's where our work in climate action, in heritage, and inclusion sits. Now, I wanted to give you a little overview of our conversation. There's the paragraph in your program, but we are also going to cover quite a lot of interests and at the intersection of the panel's work and heritage. So just as an overview, the study and protection and sharing of heritage is an important part of the British Council's cultural relations mission to build connections, understanding, and trust between people around the world. Heritage is everything that we inherit from past generations that determines our traditions and our rituals and our values. Heritage helps us form a sense of place and identity in the modern world. When combined with contemporary art expression, which often looks into the future, heritage helps us build a stronger understanding of our evolving societies. In this conversation, we will explore how our panelists are leveraging their cultural heritage in their fashion businesses. We will start with brief introductions. There are 2 presentations, and 2 of our panelists will speak from the heart. So we're really excited to be here with you, and we will start with Chido.
Thank you, Sandra. Hello, everyone. I'll say Makadi Zhenyu, that's in Chishona, since we're talking about cultural heritage here. That's how you say, how are you doing in Shishona. Otherwise, my name is Chido Kaseke, and I come from Zimbabwe. I'm the creative director and founder for a company called Patch, Maokoe, Zimbabwe. And I started the business in 2020. I'm a self-taught handbag designer, and I started learning the craft in 2015. So I've been honing my skills for 5 years, then I formalized the business in 2020. I'll talk about our core values and principles for Patch Maokoe Zimbabwe. I think everything really stems around sustainability we really value the word and what it means. So we are cautious about the materials that we use. We are cautious about the production methods that we use when we're crafting the handbags that we use. And we value sustaining livelihoods and families and communities as well through the work that we do. Yeah, and I think I love doing the work that I do because it's a representation of myself and the uniqueness that each and every person brings to the world. So I love to use my craft to show my own uniqueness in a world that has so many different people and so many different talents and skills. Thank you.
Thank you, Chido. And Godfrey, over to you.
Hi, my name is Katende Godfrey. I'm a fashion designer from Uganda. I'm a founder of a clothing brand called IGC Fashion, Ibrahim and Godfrey's Community Fashion. My brand is basically inspired by African tradition and heritage. We make clothes to tell stories and to get people inspired to dig deeper or research more about African traditions and history, more of that. IGC Fashion has a C on it, which represents community. So when we are working with our garments, we also impact communities back in Uganda. We reach out to different districts in Uganda, especially to marginalized communities, and we equip them with skills that we think they can use to empower themselves or to empower their families, more of that. IGC Fashion not only makes clothes or reach out to communities, but we also have campaigns around Uganda where we create awareness about sustainable fashion. We do workshops, we do talks where we call upon all fashion designers in the country, policymakers. We bring them in one space and we talk about the impact of fashion to the environment, and we sort of find solutions together that we can use to impact the environment. More of that, the principles that we follow. We have the community emphasis, we have the sustainability emphasis, and the cultural emphasis. With our work, we also use traditional materials incorporated in the pieces that we do. We use the BLAK cloth, as you see on the piece on the screen. This is a traditional fabric which is been there for centuries within Uganda, which is sourced from the bark of a tree, a skin of a tree. This is a fabric which has got a lot of effects from the colonial rule, and now we as artists within the country are trying to bring it back and make it not for only Uganda, but also create awareness of the fabric along the continent. So that's the emphasis of the cultural heritage. Community is the outreaches that we do to empower communities within Uganda, and sustainability, the workshops and the campaigns that we do alongside that. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Ma.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. I'm not a designer, but I love creativity, which led me to create a platform called Hub of Africa Fashion Week, which is based in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia. It started in 2010, and the reason at the time, I did grow up in New York. I love fashion. It was always in me, and I felt like moving back to Ethiopia in 2010, I didn't see any fashion platforms in the continent. And so the idea came up with my former partner, Kenyan, Linda. Why don't we organize a platform to promote the African industry? We didn't even know where to start, to be honest. Where will be the creatives? How do we find them? There was no Instagram or any particular social media platforms at the time to find even designers. So we started this in 2010. It's been now almost 14 years. When we started, it wasn't just going to be Ethiopian designers, but it was going to be a platform for the whole continent. So we've showcased over 200, I would say, designers from all over, from South Africa, Kenya, Nigeria, Rwanda, you name it. So it's been a very important platform to showcase these brands. And I want to quickly just say the mission of Hub of Africa is to empower African fashion designers by providing a platform to showcase their work and connect with industry professionals, as well as promoting African fashion on the world stage, which we've done, and stimulating the growth of the African fashion industry. We celebrate African culture heritage through fashion, fostering a vibrant community that takes African fashion to new heights. So in the nutshell, this is me from Ethiopia, organizer and founder of Hub of Africa Fashion Week. Thank you.
Salibonani, Dumelang, Magadi Genyo. Bonjour à tous, je m'appelle Gilmore. Hi, my name is Gilmore Kumalo. I'm from Bulawayo, Zimbabwe. I'm the founder and creative director of BLAK Africa, where we create sustainable projects that build the bridge between creatives and other sectors such as the diplomats, the NGO space, and the corporate space. So in everything that we do at BLAK Africa, we aim to shine a light on people. We aim to give representation, and we aim to make sure that you feel important because you are important. The question that we always ask ourselves with my team is who is supposed to be here who's not here, which is a question that all of us should ask ourselves, that who is supposed to be here who's not here. When you ask that question to yourself, it helps you to answer who else is supposed to be in the space and how are you representing them through what you're doing. So I like that we've got the sign language on the side, because that also means that we asked ourselves that question, who's supposed to be here and who's not here, and we got them here. So bravo to the team for doing that, and that's what we do at BLAK Africa. We're just moved by, again, shining a light and making sure that we create sustainable projects through skills and knowledge exchange. And that you can also experience through the exhibition that's to the far right, which is your far left. It's called Away My Culture. It's a project that we've been running with the British Council for the past 3 years, aiming and just spotlighting on the different cultural groups that we have in Zimbabwe. And we're simply saying that, people want to be seen. And when you show people that you see them through their language, their clothes, their patterns, their food, and by simply saying Salibonani, Makadi, that's it. That's what people aim to do. So that's what I do. And this is some of the stuff. This is the book from the project, which is right here. So again, it's Away My Culture. It's a lookbook. It's just telling you the story of the projects, some of the projects that we do. And with that, thank you so much. I hope you guys are going to enjoy this conversation. And there we go.
Many of us have no idea that we have 16 official languages in the country. In most cases, we just think of Isindebele and Shona and English. So Away My Culture is basically going to be exploring on not all 16, but 10 ethnic groups working with fashion designers.
My favorite part was the huts and how they paint their huts.
We had to walk quite a bit of a distance, and I walked barefoot as well.
The Nambian language like Chini.
The only thing I knew about the Shangani was that they're colorful.
They have missing teeth as well. That I found interesting.
I mean, have you seen it? It's Great Zimbabwe. I mean, I think that's what everybody takes away from Great Zimbabwe.
I learned a lot about how women differ from men in terms of culture.
Our cultures are expressed in various ways, through our attire, through our architecture, through our sculpture, through our artistic performance.
Why it's called Away My Culture is because we want people to wear who they are with pride.
Thank you so much for the generous introductions. Godfrey, Gilmore, where can we see this documentary?
So the documentary has been winning awards across the world, and it's screening here in Joburg on the 13th of June. It's called the International Africa Tourism Film Festival. So we just won an award. Please don't tell anyone because we can't announce.
Well, but we can celebrate you in the room,
we can celebrate,
right?
so you can
he just won an award. Nice. And do you have plans for it to be online?
Yes, so we just wanted first to tour festivals, and then we're going to put it online, maybe on other broadcasting networks, your Mnet, your DSTV, and for people to see, because it's just not about telling the Zimbabwean stories, but it's you wear your culture, whatever culture you belong to, how are you telling that story? And that's the most important thing, because culture is what you eat, the things that you use to decorate, the colors that you use, that is all culture. So it's just to say, this is what we're doing back home in Zim, but how do you also express your culture in your own country?
That's brilliant. Thank you for sharing. And now you have to follow the channels to make sure that you can catch it online when it drops. Okay, let's move into our conversation. My first question for the panel is, how do you think about authenticity and innovation when working through a cultural heritage lens? And if you could consider how you balance honoring culture and tradition while adopting to the modern customers and the markets. Chido?
Right. I think authenticity really comes from within, like I mentioned earlier on, that everyone is created differently. Where we come from really tells us about who we are. And our culture is, a representation of who we are. So when we do our work, it's important to incorporate our culture because you're sharing that part of yourself to the world for them to know how unique you are. And you're also creating something that is different, right? So in your work, you're producing work that is synonymous to your culture and your heritage and how people used to do things in the past so that you can share with the world. Everyone has a different culture, and if we can do that as designers to showcase our backgrounds, I think it will go a long way in creating products that are unique and different. The world is just filled with things that are so similar nowadays. So if we use our culture to leverage off it and tell our story, I think it's important to do that. Yeah.
Godfrey?
I'll just give reference to my work because I feel like it's so authentic and still in the same line, like culture inspired. So I think the how to move in the line, how I move in the line is keeping my focus on promoting the cultural heritage. But that does not divert me from being innovative, and authentic, because at the same time I feel like I keep myself, like I keep my creativity alive. I get still inspired by the architecture, the music which is going on, like that urban feel I have, but at the same time keeping it like traditional, because I think I have that goal to push, to send a message, like people have to know more about the culture and heritage. I feel like, like these two things can move together. You can still keep the heritage and inspiration, but at the same time keeping innovative, like sustainability and all that. Yeah.
I feel like the coat you're wearing is an innovation in and of itself. Could you speak a little bit to the piece you're wearing?
I'm wearing a jacket made out of BLAK cloth.
Could you stand for the good people to see?
Sorry. Yes. The jacket I'm wearing is made out of BLAK cloth. BLAK cloth is one of the first civilization of textiles in Africa, or if not the world. And this is a fabric which really got a lot of challenges due to colonization. If I can tell a little bit of the history of the cloth.
Yes, please. Yeah.
So back then, the BLAK cloth used to be like the huge fabric and the main trade in Uganda. And when colonization started, foreigners wanted to get market for other materials like cotton. So people got tortured for planting BLAK cloth or fig trees where BLAK cloth comes from, or the Mutua trees. So people were tortured. People were punished to have a fabric in their homes, And this fabric right now, many people reflect it as evolution in the country, But they don't know the whole history because they attach it to the evil or spiritual things. But there was a time when the fabric was the main trade. It used to be the main currency in the country. We used to trade with the BLAK cloth. We used to dress this up, but people don't know this. So this is a story I feel like has to be told openly. That's why I incorporate all these fabrics into my work, and I feel like that's the innovation, but also still keeping it real and natural.
Exactly, and you're keeping it alive through your designs and through your community work.
Yeah. I feel like that's the need all artists, all innovators have to keep on, because if we can tell our stories within the country, who else is going to do that? Yeah.
True. Would you like to add something?
And I also think that, using your craft for cultural preservation is a way to make the people around you proud of where their culture. We have a lot of work to do as Africans, I think, to regain, the love for our culture and where we came from, our ancestors and the legacies that they left for us. So I think, like how we do, I get inspiration a lot from material cultural objects when I'm creating some of the designs that I make. And you're able to relay to a person that this bag has been created because I want to tell you a story about ngoma, a drum. It's designed in the shape of a drum because I want to tell the story of how the drum was used back in the days and things like that. So you're preserving culture using your craft. It's brilliant. Important to do that, I think. Yeah.
Thank you so much for your responses. There will be an opportunity to ask questions in the end, so please save them. I respect the enthusiasm. keep that going, keep it alive. But please save the questions, and we will come to them in the end. Moving on, so what are some of the challenges and opportunities for cultural entrepreneurs in fashion?
Should I go ahead? I think some of the challenges is there's such a huge disconnect. So I was having a conversation with someone yesterday, and I said, in most cases, us as creatives from the African continent, we are so keen to telling other people's stories. So I'm involved with the Mozambique Fashion Week, and every time we go, then we're doing curatorial for the Fashion Week. Oh, hello. They put you against, they put everyone's picture on the table, and then they start looking at what's so unique, what stories they're telling about where you come from. So you find that most of us as creatives within the African continent, we want to sing someone else's story, we want to design someone else's story, and we're forgetting that in our very backyard, when you go to your rural home to see your koko or your kulu, just have a conversation with her. She'll tell you so much of what they used to do, what was so important to them, the patterns that they used to decorate their homes, their utensils, the shapes that they used to decorate their homes. And then if you go there, our culture is cool, guys. That's the thing. So I don't know where we've been.
Say that again.
Our culture is so cool.
That's the part where you respond.
Right. So, yes, there's this dark image that has been put upon our cultures. Like, it's traditional healers. They're not witches. We're traditional healers. Is Angoma. So we need to just go back and tap into that story and find out Granny Kulu, Granny is Granny, Ukoko, Kulu is grandfather. How did you used to do this? And then we take that and we use it to inspire what we're working on. Of course, we're living in a world that's evolving, so we can just tap back to who we are so that we can have some sort of an identity. So our stories can only be told best by ourselves. So if we're busy telling the stories of Americans and Italians and British, who do you expect to tell the Ghanaian and the South African story? That's the question we should ask ourselves. A round of applause.
So challenges, yeah, there are many challenges, I think, within the creative industry as a whole. The designers themselves can give you some of their challenges, but from what I've seen, they have many, from sourcing. I can speak about Ethiopia. They can't find quality zippers or buttons, small things, but really major. Financing, professional tailors. So a lot of times what I've seen with creatives and designers is they do everything. They're the designers, they're the marketings, they're the accountants, they're literally all of it. So they have to be able to collaborate, I think, more. But then when it comes to sourcing, I love what Godfrey's doing, So he's not looking into sourcing imported material. He's using local fabric and being creative and making it his own. In Ethiopia, I don't know how many of you guys know, but the handloom, woven material is very big. And what I see happening is even that, because it's a very labor-intensive traditional way of making the textile, they're having challenges also. They're limited. So there's a lot of copying, similarities within the brand. So somebody will say, that looks like mine, you know, the textile, because they all source it from the same place. So those are the things. And then for us as a platform, as a, you know, we have our own challenges that we also have, because the platform is very sponsorship driven and needs a lot of collaborations. I've managed to sustain it for 14 years, but yeah, still we have our own. It hasn't been easy, but it is an important platform for the creatives to show their brands and promote. And I love how they tell their stories. We had, just on that cultural, I want to quickly point out, we had a Rwandese designer called Masamara, if you guys know him. Yeah, oh my God. So his collection was Silence the Guns. And the way he presented it was just absolutely brilliant. So we're amazing storytellers. And I think our platforms are very important, and we'll continue to strive and give these creatives the platform that we have.
Yeah. Thank you. I'd love to hear one opportunity. You know, what would you see as an opportunity for the sector, for fashion entrepreneurs?
Opportunities, my God. There's a lot. I think through collaboration, you have to open your eyes and be able to collaborate. It is a very, I mean, you can see it in the last few years when we started, there wasn't that many designers. Now it's globally, you know, people are looking into African fashion, and it's right now is the time. So I think through collaborations, there's a lot that creatives can do. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Chido, Patchwork is a sustainable capacity enterprise working primarily with women. Could you tell us more about how you work with artisans and share some of the success stories and challenges you've experienced on your journey?
Sure. I think I'd like to say that I love to work with artisans because it's a way of sharing my skill. Like I said, I'm a self-taught designer, but I also believe that it's an inborn talent that, you know, I was born with, for me to then eventually say to myself, I really want to create something with my hands. So the reason I love to work with artisans is because it's a way for me to share that skill, and it'll allow them to also like sustain their livelihoods, their families. And it's been an amazing journey because most of the women that we work with and train would have come out of nowhere. They have no school, no knowledge of or prior experience of work. And we focus on widows that we train to become artisans. And it's such a special thing because just from working with their hands, they're able to now lift up their own lives and their families. And we also work with cultural artisans to do some of the work, to outsource some of the things that we use to create our handbags and our work. So it's special because you're also working towards preserving that skill that they used to use in terms of, if it's hand dyeing, using natural dyes and things like that. Yeah, it's been amazing. I think the challenges, yeah, I wouldn't want to then say, you know, finances, because we finance the training that we do when we work with artisans. But I think accessing markets maybe for the work that they then end up creating when we've trained them hasn't been very easy. So we're really working on that, and that's the reason we're happy to be here, because people can see some of the work and it can, yeah, go out there into the world.
That's where you plug and point, tell them where it is.
Yes, so you'll find us where the designers are. You'll see our work over there. Please come through and have a look at our work.
You see, you'll be supporting artisans, huh, guys? Okay. Thank you for your response.
It's a pleasure.
Godfrey, community is also a running theme in the work that you've done. You have organized community cipher workshops. You have outreach events like Kwetu Kwanza. what have you learned about growing your business and your brand while using fashion for social change?
What I've learned, I think, is the more impact you cause, because I feel like my brand is growing organically from the community that I've built. So many people are actually reaching out to me, like from different angles, I don't know, but I feel like that has been a very big impact. Before my fashion brand was established, I used to be a social worker. And I feel like I've been growing with a community right now which looks up to me. But I also feel like many people see me as a leader, and some people want to actually impact the communities that I'm working with. And I feel like these have actually like created like different networks for my brand as well. Yeah, but at the same time, like it's not, at the end of the day, it's not about the garments that you do. It's not about how beautiful they are. People usually look at the impact that the brand is doing. Yeah, and I feel like that's something that maybe all creatives or all business people could do, because it's not about the product, it's about the message and the information and the impact that you're creating. And I feel like that's been a very big impact for my brand, yes. Thank you.
Thank you. Gilmore, could you share with us some of the insights from your time working on I Wear My Culture? What have you learned about Zimbabwe's relationship with heritage and fashion?
So I talk too much, you need to take your more shush when I'm about to go over the time. So I'll just give a brief background. So back in 2017, I wrote down that I want to do a project that just shines a light on different ethnic groups within the country. I'm born of a Ndebele father who was a Kumalo who went on to marry a Shona woman, a Zulu from Rusape. So if you know the history of Zimbabwe, you know back in 1986 there was a war that happened between these two tribes. So I'm basically like a hybrid, you know. So all the years we have been in a place where we shine so much on the Shona and the Ndebele, and we forgot that Zimbabwe is a Xhosa people. So there's the Sotho people in Zimbabwe, there's the Khoisan in Namibia. So going to my mother's side of the family, the statement said about my father's side of the family, my father's side of the family statement said about the mother's side. I was like, yo, this is confusing. So I can imagine someone else who's not from these two major groups. So then I thought to myself, you know what? I wrote it down. I want to do a project called I Wear My Culture, which allows people to wear who they are with so much pride. And so when we went out, most of the most important things that we learned from 2022 when it started was there's such a huge gap between skills and knowledge from those that have lived, whom we think are, what do we say in, you know, the slang, it's crap or whatever, you know. The older people, we don't really value them. But when I was doing the project, I realized that that huge knowledge and skills gap that we have can actually be built by us just going back home. Going back home just simply means traveling for 4 hours to go to your rural setting and then ask and find questions. So that for me was one of the most important things, to be able to learn from those that have lived before us. Because if we don't ask questions to the older people, they're going to pass on with that information. And what happens to us? It means who we are deteriorates, or it dies with them. I learned that all people want when we're doing the project is to be seen. So every time we're traveling to these different places, because we traveled for 6 months in Zimbabwe, going to the 10 different ethnic groups, and they're all on extremes when you're traveling. And as we're going there, we would have facilitators from the group. So another thing is, when you're now going into community in the rural setting, there's still cultural protocol. The same way with protocol even here. So we had to go with someone who belongs to the people, because I, as a Ndebele person, going to the Tonga people who are found in Zimbabwe and Zambia, I'm an outsider going into that space. So I learned collaboration. You touched on that. So we collaborated with people that are originally from the places. And as we were going there for those 4 hours, they were teaching us how to greet in the languages. So as we arrived there, I remember we went to the Xhosa people in Bembesi, and we found the chief waiting for us. And then when we greeted them in their languages, they all lit. And that made me realize that all people want is to be seen. That's all everyone wants And that's what the project taught me, that people want to be seen, and we have a lot of work to do in terms of telling our stories in a cooler way, because we're cooler people, right? We're the young people, but let's go back and get those stories. Let's tell them through our fashion, because people are people with the clothes that they wear, with the colors that they use for their clothes, with the food that they eat, with the shapes that they use. So most importantly, we really focus on the differences that we have as the 10,000 groups possibly in this room. But then if we zone in, we realize we're so similar. The borders crossed us. We did not cross the borders, right? So all across as we're traveling in Zimbabwe, I realized that the shapes that we use to decorate our huts in the rural areas are the same. We use the circle. We use the triangle, which is a chevron. So after all, we're the same people. So for me, the fact that people want to be seen, and we have a role to play to making sure that we shine a light on different people and their different groups that they belong to, is something that really hit me the most.
Thank you. And I think all our panelists are doing a great job of helping people be seen in very different ways. So thanks for that response. Mahlet, the Hub of Africa Fashion Week has been on 10 years plus. I think you said 14. What observations have you made about how designers are leveraging their cultural heritage?
Again, I think African designers tell their stories through fashion. So through these platforms, we've seen so many designers from the continent using our platform to showcase exactly that, telling their stories from all over. And, thankfully, because we've been consistent and have been around for now, like you said, like 13 years plus, we've had global attention, meaning global media coverages. So the designers are realizing these platforms are very important to really tell their stories and showcase. Yes, we have social media, Instagram, but they will have to look for you to find you to see your story. But as a platform, bringing all these designers in one space, you get to see that many stories on our stage. So the platforms are important. And yeah, so this is what I've seen throughout the years. And the fact that we have African designers, like I said, not just Ethiopian, but from all over. So many different stories, but like Gilmore just said, we are very much similar through our heritage and culture, but still many different stories that we can tell through our fashion. So it's been amazing. I just love the creative industry, and not just fashion, by the way. This is where all the photographers, the models, and such platform. Even in Ethiopia, it's become, I feel, like a very respected industry, the modeling. Before, through fashion shows, it's just to go out to see pretty girls, So even promoting modeling industry as, that it is an industry, I think we've helped, create that through the platforms to have the modeling industry respected as well. So, yeah.
Thank you. I'd like us to move into questions from the panel. We have two on the screen here. The first one will be, how do you differentiate between modernism and contemporary design when you describe your work, especially talking about cultural preservation and possibly translation in your work? Who would like to go first? We'd love to hear your voice, Godfrey. The one at the bottom. I'm happy to interpret the question as well. I think it's looking at, because the irony of this question is the use of Western frames to respond to cultural references. So perhaps we could think about it as, how do you translate the presentation and the thinking of your work for modern audiences?
To tell you the truth, I most of the time follow my inspirations, and suddenly I just find people interested in my work. But I barely get a big of influence for the market, but I also feel like the more authentic you are, like people are going to tap into that energy that you have as a creative. Yeah, I tend to, of course, walk in the line of campaigning and teaching awareness about African heritage, and also like these inspirations I move around and see, I just find myself that people are tapping into the work that I do. So it's not a big of a challenge, I feel like. You just have to keep it real to yourself, and people are easily gonna tap into that energy that you put into the creativity, I feel like. Yeah.
I like that response because it's tapping into the point that because the work is coming from your core, your originality, your inspiration, that it translates automatically, that you don't necessarily need to layer it or belabor the point to be understood by different audiences, those who are already connected to that, the language that you're speaking, either visually or through your material, identify with it across generations, languages, and geographies. So that's a really good response. Chido?
I don't have a lot to add, but I just think it's important to understand both the current and also, the history that you're actually trying to put across. So that you can find ways to merge the two and marry them and then put it across for people to understand and appreciate.
Is that your approach?
Yes.
Okay.
That is.
Of course.
I think also we tend to really focus more on where we're going and we forget where we're coming from. So it's almost just as simple as, the pressure of I want to do so well in sports, and then sometimes you need to pause and look back and say, okay, how long have I traveled to be on chapter 15 of my book, which has 20 chapters? So it's just adding to your point to say we got to have to still go back and find out, because most of the things that we're looking for are with us.
Yeah.
We tend to look east, west, and elsewhere, but sometimes it's actually looking into your house and say, hey, Farai, please can you just narrate to me how you used to do things 30 years back? So those stories need to be told by us, because obviously we can't forget that we're coming from somewhere. We can't just be leaves that are just floating in the air. We're leaves that are coming off a tree, so that we need to come back to the tree and to the root that is feeding these leaves. So we need to still go back, but not forget that we need to go forward anyway.
That's useful. Thank you. I love that the questions are coming in. The pace, though. We might need the... let's go back. Oh, my. All right. That's faster than I can read, guys. Let's see whether this can help. Okay. I've been told to do nothing. And so if we could go to the AGOA question. My eyesight is not great. So the 2023 Fashion Insights report cited African fashion designers are the primary drivers for sharing and promoting African heritage and cultures. At the same time, it's also cited protection of designers' copyright as one of the biggest challenges that designers on the continent face. It's a fine line because culture and heritage is for all, but it's also vulnerable to exploitation by the West. We saw this in Balmain's 2024 collection, where there was controversy about Balmain stealing Kenyan designs. Could you tell us more about how African designers can continue to share our cultural heritage while protecting its copyright?
Wow. This is really a tough one, and it was mentioned intellectual property, right?
Yes.
How do you protect your designs? And I don't think a lot of creatives are even aware on how to go about it. We did have this discussion last January during our event. It is a very difficult topic because, where do you even go to really protect your designs? So this is something definitely needs a wider conversations and awareness for a lot of the creatives, how to protect their designs. And because there was something else also where Ethiopian traditional dress was used by, I forgot, I don't know what designer, but it was a very controversial, something like this, and it was squashed right away. And there needs to be a big awareness and discussion about it and finding ways how to protect designs for sure.
Yeah. Godfrey or Chido, as designers, do you have any experience or responses you'd like to reflect on that question of copyright and intellectual property?
Yeah, I would say, like, since our work is mostly inspired by culture and heritage, and this has to do a lot with the policymakers, because as individual designers, that's a very huge task for us to carry on. What we can do is to claim, like, to be in spaces for people to, when they see like this garment is IGC fashion, this is Katende Godfrey who made it, yeah? We could claim that by having a wide like publicity, or like we market ourselves a bit higher. But much of it, because that's a very big challenge that we have in Uganda, BLAK cloth is actually being used with Mercedes-Benz in their interior designs, and Puma is making shoes out of BLAK cloth. And this is a very huge conversation within the country, but I don't think an individual designer like IGC could come and claim their copyright from such a big company. I feel like that's a role of policymakers. That's why, as creatives, we have as well to work hand in hand with the policymakers. Usually we tend to be in our own bubbles, but this is where we need to be open and also bring these such influential people on board, and we have discussions like that.
Yeah, and I think also to, as far as is possible, you know, make sure that you have your own education around your intellectual property and understand the context and the law in your country to be able to protect and preserve your rights. Because as we are all representing different countries here, the specifics of the law would be quite difficult to get into. But it is quite critical to be able to organize, join your corporations, join your associations. There's strength in numbers, and there's power to your voice. We have 3 minutes left, so we will pick 2 questions. I will give Anonymous a go. To the female panelists, how do you sustain your creative fashion business in this patriarchal system?
Sheesh. It's a fight, and I think you really have to be there for what you know yourself to want and to be deep down inside. Because it's so easy to be overlooked, or even, I mean, growing up, or even just as a girl child, your place is supposed to be either in the home. If you're not in the home, you're told that you have to go and do a job to help sustain the family, something that doesn't feed you or, you know, grow your soul. So I think it's a choice that one has to make, to stand on what they believe in, to really push hard and prove a point that, you know, you can succeed even when there's a patriarchal system that is forcing you to become something that you don't really want to be, you know, in a space that's already hard to bloom. So, yeah, I think that's what I would have to say, because, yeah, I mean, it hasn't been easy, obviously, that you want to start a business for yourself in the creative economy. So you really have to fight, to push, to make sure that things work out. Yeah, you always, as a woman, have to go the extra mile, I think.
Yeah. And I feel like for those who are interested in that question, can they find you somewhere by your stand potentially and exchange tips and tricks to smashing the patriarchy?
And, yeah, hear everyone else's views and things like that.
All right. Mahlet?
I think I just want to add, she pretty much said everything, but we have to support our creatives. We have to wear African, and this is the only way I see that they can sustain their business, you know, and within the fashion industry. So we continuously have to be mindful, intentional, and wear African and support our designers, honestly. And the market access, which is really important for them as well, which we do through our platforms. We organize pop-ups, and yeah, so I'll end with that.
Okay.
She said pretty much most of it.
That's good. Thank you. All right. There was a question on collaboration across art form. I'd like to have a response to that, because I think it's something that doesn't happen as often, and is a place that creatives often get stuck on. For how do I, as a filmmaker, approach you as a fashion designer to collaborate on something, and how do we navigate that? So does any of you have experience collaborating across art form?
Yeah, I think we see collaboration all the time, even in films, where you see there's a fashion aspect, the makeup aspect of the things. So we also need to be very deliberate about it. So I'll give an example of the documentary. We could have not told a better story if we had not had a videographer traveling with us. So that is collaboration with the makeup artist. So if you go into that side, hey, I'm advertising. If you go to that side and you go see the exhibition, you see the pictures, there's makeup, we collaborate with the makeup artist. So storytelling is, we tell stories in different forms. We tell stories through our music, our fashion, our clothing, our makeup, our books, literature, etc. So already that's collaboration, because a book would not be there if there's no graphic designer or if there's no writer. So in a way, we're already collaborating, but we really want the word to be in our forehead to say, you are collaborating, but it's the little things that we're doing where we partner amongst ourselves, because we can only tell better stories if we actually put our heads together, because everyone has a different point of view.
Yeah. Just to add on that, as a platform also, I mean, our last event, I think we worked with over 200 people, including models, hair, makeup artists, photographers, videographers, production team. I mean, talk about collaboration, and then the designers and backstage. So, yeah, through our platforms, we're always collaborating, because all of that cannot come together just, by myself. So,
yeah, and reading it between the lines a little bit, I feel like platforms like this are built for networking and collaboration. So if you do have interest in working with or learning from any of our panelists, do feel free to approach them. I am volunteering them with their consent, wink, wink, to hear from you. And I'd like to end on that note. And just lastly, if you could tell us where we can find you on the internet so that people can look for your channels.
My Instagram handle is IGC Fashion. It's the same name on all, like YouTube, website. Yeah, it's IGC Fashion.
Thank you.
For us, same thing. If you search us as Hub of Africa Fashion Week, you'll find us on Instagram and some of the videos on YouTube as well. Thank you so much.
All right, so for us, it's Paper Bag Africa. So it's your paper bag with African content in it. So it's throughout all the social media platforms.
I thought, is it Slido or Slido? I thought you'd have put scan codes for us on there with our IG handles. Otherwise, you can find us on as Patch Zimbabwe on Instagram. Yeah, Patch Zimbabwe. It's easy to find. PATCH.
Brilliant. Thank you all for your kind attention. It's been an honor to be here with you today, and that wraps up our time. Thank you.